Hello and welcome to Haunted Montreal's Spooky Story Sessions. I'm your host, Holly Rhiannon, and today I'm going to tell you all about the old Windsor Hotel. With over 450 documented ghost stories, Montreal is easily the most haunted city in Canada, if not all of North America. Haunted Montreal is dedicated to researching these paranormal tales, and on this channel we bring you new videos in both French and English every second Saturday. Today we examine the old Windsor Hotel, once the most palatial in Canada and the only location where American author Mark Twain had a paranormal experience. But before we get into today's story, please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button so you get notified every time we have a new story to share. And hey, if you're already subscribed, thank you so much. Welcome back. I'm so happy to see you again. Now, without further ado, let's get spooky. Montreal once hosted the Windsor Hotel, which for decades billed itself as the best in all the Dominion of Canada. Opened in 1878, it is often considered to be the first Grand Railway hotel in Canada. Modeled on New York's luxurious Waldorf Astoria, the Windsor Hotel catered to well-heeled travelers arriving by train at the nearby Windsor Station. The Windsor Hotel had 382 sumptuous guest rooms and 6 restaurants, not to mention luxurious lecture halls and ballrooms. The centerpiece was a magnificent 15-ton cupola above the main reception lobby. Management even supplied tourist information to clients in the form of the Windsor Hotel Guide to the City of Montreal with a shopping index and directory. Over the years, the Windsor Hotel played host to many famous guests, including British royalty. King George VI and Queen Elizabeth II stayed at the hotel in 1939 with great fanfare. At a state banquet, Montreal Mayor Camillien Houde famously gave a speech in which he told the royal couple, "I thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming, and my wife thanks you from her bottom too." Other celebrity guests included Sarah Bernhardt, Rudyard Kipling, John F. Kennedy, Winston Churchill, and Oscar Wilde. Even McGill University academic and humorist Stephen Leacock lived out his later years at the famous hotel. Important meetings also happened within the hotel. In 1917, the National Hockey League was formed there when owners of the Montreal Canadiens, the Quebec Bulldogs, and Ottawa Senators and Montreal Wanderers met in one of the hotel's restaurants and hammered out a plan. Another famous guest was none other than American author and wit Mark Twain, who had his only paranormal experience while staying at the Windsor Hotel in December 1881. Mark Twain wrote about his experience in Harper's Magazine's September 1895 issue called Mental Telegraphy Again. In a nutshell, he spotted a woman whom he had not seen in over 20 years, wearing a particular dress in the Windsor Hotel while giving an afternoon lecture. Desperate to speak with her, he was disappointed when he could not locate her afterwards in the crowd. Later that evening, he finally met up with her. Wearing the exact same dress, she claimed that she had just arrived in Montreal an hour earlier and had not been at the afternoon reception. Mark Twain's article had the headline, "A Glimpse at Second Sight." Here it is in full. Several years ago, I made a campaign on the platform with George W. Cable. In Montreal, we were honored with a reception. It began at 2 o'clock in the afternoon in a long drawing room in the Windsor Hotel. Mr. Cable and I stood at one end of the room, and the ladies and gentlemen entered in at the other end, crossed it at that end, then came up the long left-hand side, shook hands with us, said a word or two, and passed on in the usual way. My sight is of the telescopic sort, and I presently recognized a familiar face among the throng of strangers drifting in at the distant door, and I said to myself with surprise and high gratification, "That is Mrs. R." I had forgotten that she was Canadian. She had been a great friend of mine in Carson City in the early days, and I had not seen her or heard from her in 20 years. I had not been thinking about her. There was nothing to suggest her to me, nothing to bring her to my mind. In fact, to me, she had long ago ceased to exist and had disappeared from my consciousness. Twain continued. But I knew her instantly, and I saw her so clearly that I was able to note some of the peculiars of her dress and did note them, and they remained in my mind. I was impatient for her to come. In the midst of the handshakings, I snatched glimpses of her and noted her progress with the slow-moving file at the end of the room. Then I saw her start up the side, and this gave me a full view of her face from the front. I saw her last when she was within 25 feet of me. For an hour, I kept thinking she must still be in the room somewhere and would come at last, but I was disappointed. Mark Twain was hoping to see her again at an evening lecture to get reacquainted. He explained, "When I arrived in the lecture hall that evening, someone said, 'Come into the waiting room, there's a friend of yours there who wants to see you. You'll not be introduced, you are to do the recognizing without help if you can.' I said to myself, 'It is Mrs. R. I shan't have any trouble.' There were perhaps 10 ladies present, all seated. In the midst of them was Mrs. R., as I had expected. She was dressed exactly as she was when I had seen her in the afternoon. I went forward and shook hands with her and called her by name and said, 'I knew you the moment you appeared at the reception this afternoon.' Suddenly, there was an awkward moment between them. Mark Twain described it as such. She looked surprised and said, 'But I was not at the reception. I had just arrived from Quebec and have not been in town an hour.' It was my turn to be surprised now. I said, 'I can't help it. I give you my word of honor that it is as I say. I saw you at the reception, and you were dressed precisely as you are now. When they told me a moment ago that I should find a friend in this room, your image rose before me, dress and all, just as I had seen you at the reception.' Those are the facts. She was not at the reception at all, or anywhere near it, but I saw her there nonetheless, and most clearly and unmistakably. To that I could make oath." Mark Twain was baffled and continued, "How is one to explain this? I was not thinking of her at the time, had not thought of her for years, but she had been thinking of me, no doubt. Did her thought flit through leagues of air to me and bring with it that clear and pleasant vision of herself? I think so. That was and remains my sole experience in the matter of apparitions. I mean apparitions that come when one is ostensibly awake. I could have been asleep for a moment. The apparition could have been the creature of a dream. Still, that is nothing to the point. The feature of interest is the happening of the thing just at that time instead of at an earlier or later time, which is argument that its origin lay in thought transference." Following this incident, Mark Twain never had another paranormal experience during the rest of his lifetime. Whether or not the Windsor Hotel had anything to do with this bizarre case of thought transference is unknown at this time. What is known is that the hotel was built next to the old St. Antoine Cholera Cemetery, which is a well-known haunted location full of mass graves. Perhaps there is a correlation between the paranormal activity and the restless souls buried in trenches in what is now Dorchester Square. Another interesting fact is that the Windsor Hotel suffered 2 major fires, which might also be related to the haunted cemetery's ghosts. In 1906, a fire destroyed almost 100 guest rooms, which prompted major renovations. These included the addition of a new wing called the Windsor Annex to the north of the original building. Unlike the rest of the hotel, the new wing was designed in the Second Empire style. The number of rooms more than doubled, going from 368 to 750. With the expansion, the hotel occupied an entire city block. In 1957, another massive blaze destroyed a third of the hotel. With extensive damage, the original part of the hotel had to be demolished. This included the massive cupola, which came down on August 15, 1959, with a loud bang that shook the downtown core. On the vacant site of the original hotel, business people and investors saw the construction of the CIBC skyscraper within the next 5 years. Today, the Windsor Annex is no longer a hotel, but rather a luxurious site that caters to weddings, press launches, galas, and other high-profile events. Featuring the famous Peacock Alley named after the peacock designs in its stained glass windows, along with 2 ballrooms, the Annex is a reminder of the old days when the Windsor Hotel was once the most palatial lodging in all of Canada. Whether or not the Windsor Annex is haunted is unknown at this time and certainly requires investigation. Are you a Montreal resident or perhaps a tourist who had a strange experience in the old Windsor Hotel when it was around, or maybe the Windsor Annex now? If so, we'd love to know. As always, we want to hear your theories about what could be going on. Thank you so much for stopping by. If this is your first video, we do hope you'll stick around for the next one. We put out videos in both French and English every second Saturday. If you'd like to learn more about the organization founded by the talented Donovan King, it's all listed in the description down below, along with links to purchase tickets for in-person haunted storytelling tours. Remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. We'll have a new video out for you in a couple weeks, but until then, stay spooky.